bring you up here. Thank you, Mike.
Hey, I'm Mike Cartwright, and it's an honor to be here with you today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your patriotism. Thank you for helping to support our elections, local, state, and federal. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the Pinellas watchdogs and some of the other patriots here in America, or particularly the state of Florida, started identifying candidates for supervisor election. Because if we don't have integrity at our elections, we're not going to have integrity throughout many of our other offices if we don't get we the people to get that vote counted. So they identified 13 candidates. Initially it was 11, and those candidates are right here. Here's 11 of them, and these are Republicans that challenge oftentimes either the sitting Democrat or the sitting Republican, because they saw that there was a problem going on in their own elections. And so one of those candidates is someone that was identified to be one of your speakers tonight. And what he started doing is that he saw problems with the election. So he tried to do public records requests. We all know what that is, right? FOIA, FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. That's where we, the people, have the right to get the public records. Now, unless it's an active investigation or somehow classified information, then we understand that there may be some reasons for that. Well, let's see what one of these candidates for Pinellas did when he tried to do a public records request for Pinellas County to find out about the transport of the ballots by the sheriff. He did a FOIA, he did a public records request, and this is what he got.
None yet. Of course.
Does that surprise anyone?
Yeah, everything's, yeah. Has anybody ever seen, redacted or whatever? We understand sometimes, but no, not, if you're redacting too much, what are you hiding? If you won and your candidates won, what have you got to hide? So that's why we need to find better candidates. And so that's why I'm going to soon be introducing you here to someone that took up the challenge and they ran for office. They announced themselves, and I hope he gets to tell you who helped talk him into running for office, because when they did, he explained to me that if I run for office, I'll have standing. Standing is when you have a vested interest in that race. It's one thing if we're out here, we go, I'm going to sue the sheriff and I'm going to sue the supervisor election. Well, if you weren't a candidate in that race, then you don't have standing. So that's what this patriot did. He went ahead and he took up the challenge, and he made a press release, and we all gathered there in Pinellas, and he announced his candidacy. And at this time, I'm going to introduce a Army guard for 10 years who served our country and who is now serving our state and a country as a candidate for office. And then he also is doing forensic examination of other elections, and he's finding that there's a big problem, and we're not going to let go of this. And there's other patriots throughout the state that were part of that group. 2 of the 13 won. That was in Monroe County, Key West, and in Seminole County, just outside of Orlando. Those challenging incumbent patriot candidates won, and we're hoping that they're going to help the other candidates and help expose where the problems are in our elections. So at this time, I would like to introduce our distinguished guest and the next speaker, Mr. Chris Gleason. Please give him a big hand.
Well, thank you all for being here tonight. I know that you're all a bunch of good patriots being here and actually caring, and that's a big thing, because there's a lot of people who aren't taking the time to come out and learn and understand, what's really going on here. So, with a show of hands, who here believes that there should be cheating in elections? Okay. So, who here believes that there should not be cheating in elections? Okay. I'm in a good room. You know, I've actually been in a room before where I did this poll, and when I asked them if there should be any cheating, or there shouldn't be any cheating, everybody kept their hands down. I'm like, wow, I guess I found where the 7% is. So, because 93% of everybody that we've talked to believe that there should be no cheating in elections. Now, there isn't any other subject, any other hot button issue that I know of nationwide where 93% of all Americans agree on anything, right? I mean, and this is across all political spectrums, okay, across all sexes, across all orientations, right? And all political parties. And everybody, 93% of us, we all believe this. The problem, however, is the 7%. And so when I ran for office, I ran because the good people of Pinellas County browbeat me into running. And I was involved in a bunch of cases nationwide on election fraud, tied to voter rolls and data and all sorts of other crazy stuff. And we saw these two cases in Maryland where we found irrefutable evidence of fraud. And they shut both cases down in the federal courts. Crooked federal judge, you believe that? A crooked federal judge shut down these cases. The first case, once we dropped all of the information about the Act Blue smurfing and money laundering, and how in Maryland the machines hadn't actually legally been certified, and the machines were flipping votes, and we had all the evidence, we had all the data. And when the judge saw that, she soiled her robe and then quickly closed the case, sealed all the exhibits in the case, and said, there's nothing to see here. The attorney that I was working with, he then appealed it to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. They then, some time later, ended up ruling against him, and now he's taking his case to the United States Supreme Court. There was another case. It was Maryland election integrity versus the state of Maryland. And they too sued over similar things. But what they had sued over was dirty voter rolls, the machines were not accurate, and that, again, they were illegally disenfranchising voters by adjudicating their ballots as being 100% blank and then hiding the evidence of it. And so, as we're approaching, you have to announce to run, this crooked judge, who coincidentally was the same judge who had ruled on the first case. And she goes, oh, well, you know, there's nothing to see here. And even if these people, this group, they don't have standing, and even if they did have standing, it doesn't matter because they weren't judicious enough in trying to bring this stuff forward. Now I'm going to tell you what was really interesting for me, okay? Because I had only sent about 800 emails, okay? Only 800 emails, only about a terabyte of data, okay? So if 800 emails and a terabyte of data isn't judicious enough, I don't know what is. So the good people in Pinellas County said, Chris, you have to do it. And I'm like, no, I don't really want to do this. And they browbeat me, and then I said, okay, I'll do it, because then I get standing. And we put in a good fight. And I knew what I was up against. I knew what I was facing. We saw the crooked sheriff, you know, the day after I announced running, the crooked sheriff put out an article saying, oh, your votes are fine, Julie Marcus is wonderful. Well, of course, because he participated in the election fraud. He transported the ballots. And in that election, the 2020 election, which was stolen nationwide, okay, what ended up happening was Crooked Sheriff Galtieri and Julie Marcus, they both won largely by vote by mail ballot, coincidentally. And so I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this, and Donald Trump lost by 1,241 vote by mail ballots, or ballots in general. And I'm like, wow, this unknown supervisor of elections candidate who nobody's heard of before, who just assumed the job in April of 2020, she got more votes than Donald Trump did. Kind of like over here in Hillsborough County, where Craig Latimer got more votes than Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. Who would have thought that Hillsborough County had the next great white hope in the Hillsborough County Supervisor of Elections office? Who would have thought that? I wouldn't have thought that. But apparently, this strange pattern of SOE candidates getting more votes than the presidential candidates or the Senate candidates is the thing. Who would have thunk it? So I've been working with a guy over in Palm Beach County called his name's Jeff Bongiorno, and I've been providing him with lots of data and helping him with his case, because Wendy Link, Palm Beach County Supervisor election, she got more votes than Trump or Harris too. You know, so we ran the slate. So actually the Pinellas Watchdogs and Kathy Chamberlain and a group there, they all ran this slate of America First, MAGA, Supervisor of Elections candidates. And so we ran this slate across the state. And I'm gonna disagree with you, Mike. I'm gonna say that they're in every race where we ran true MAGA, Make America Great Again, America First candidates, we all got a shellacking. But why, how is that? It's kind of like, you know, we have these too big to rig races. Well, apparently the Florida election fraud mafia, okay, they got the memo because we've been calling them out on what the shenanigans that's been going on. Now, one of the things that we did was, like Mike said, we did a lot of public records requests. I've done probably more public records requests than about anybody in the country at this point, I think. We built a system that automates this stuff for me. And so I can do 2,000 public records requests in a day. And sometimes I do 2,000 public records requests in a day when I look for something. And what will happen is somebody out there, not all election administrators are crooked. Not all of them. Some are really on it, and they give us stuff quickly. And so we get stuff. And one of the things we got were audit logs in certain states. There's this really good AG in Texas. His name's Ken Paxton. And he's done a lot of stuff for us and with us. And I actually got Ken Paxton sued. So there was some crooked election administrators who didn't want to give me the data and me the logs. And so Ken Paxton said, no, you got to give them the stuff. You got to give them the audit logs. It's, you know, they're election records. You got to give it to them. So they sued him over it. And he ended up winning. And we ended up getting the data. And the data that we saw in Texas helped us here in Florida. And we put a lot of pressure on Craig Latimer here. Put a lot of pressure on Crooked Craig. That's what I like to call him, Crooked Craig. And Mike, he rallied the troops because Crooked Craig wanted to charge us, I think it was like $1,800 to get what Ken Paxton told everybody to give us for free. And so we paid the money and we got the records. And in the records, we found all kinds of things. So Crooked Craig, he redacted or deleted certain information. Well, we took money, we paid him money for official election records. Okay, so there's an offer, there was an acceptance, and there was consideration. Consideration was he gives us the records, we give him the money, right? What happens if you make a deal with somebody for money, and you give them the money, and then they give you something that has been altered or forged? Is that a crime?
Yes.
Yeah, correct. You should know that, being a former sheriff. So one of the neat things that we were looking for how they were adjudicating these ballots, because we saw this large number of what's called blank ballots. And some of you are probably saying, what the heck's a blank ballot? Well, a blank ballot is defined by law at the federal level with the machine manufacturers and here in Florida as a ballot that doesn't have one bubble colored in, not one bubble colored in. And so we asked the question, what is that? Like, so who goes out on election day, in vote by mail, in early voting, or provisional, and casts a 100% blank ballot? Who does that? Anybody? Anybody here? Anybody in their right mind would take time out of your day to go and do everything that you're legally required to do to cast the ballot and not make one choice? Not even one. Not even for Craig Latimer. I mean, because, you know, I mean, they should be running him for president because, I mean, he got more votes than Trump or anyone else. So let's see here. I want to show you. All right. So I write a Substack. I've been writing a Substack for a while. And what I do is I have been exposing all of the shenanigans that has been going on. And so one of the things that we had identified in Maryland and here in Florida, like I said, is this whole blank ballot thing. And so as we were looking, we were getting data. And I was getting this data from everybody in the state of Maryland. So there's a series of reports. They're called the Election Summary Report, the Precinct Report, the Canvassing Report. There's a series of reports. And basically what it shows is a breakdown of how people voted and what they did, okay? And so there's this one report in particular. It's called the EL52 or EL52S. And so what it does is it shows you the total number of registered voters, the total number of ballots cast, the total number of ballots cast blank, and voter turnout. And so in particular, here in Baltimore, this is in Baltimore County, overall, you had 6.33% of all the ballots cast in Baltimore County was 100% blank. 26,374 ballots to be exact. Now, what was particularly interesting was in the central count over here, precinct 1, 56.88% of all the ballots cast were 100% blank. Do you think that that's an error? Maybe? Do you think the machine read it wrong? So we dug. We did a little bit of extra work here. We had found some neat stuff in an election in the Villages for Laura Loomer. Laura Loomer had run against this guy, Daniel Webster. And I had identified in Orange County, of all places, they had precincts where they had the exact percentage of blank ballots being cast to the second decimal point out of hundreds of precincts. And so there was like 4 or 6. Well, in Baltimore, there's a lot of them. And so we did some math on this, and we found some really, really, really interesting stuff. So with, we ran some probabilities on this. We ran some probabilities on this stuff. And essentially what we figured out in Maryland was that for this to occur, the likelihood that this would actually happen had the same mathematical odds of Lori here being able to correctly identify a grain of sand that Alan here had identified on 1,000 earths. And so Lori had to correctly identify the one single grain of sand that he picked on the 1,000 earths. That's the mathematical likelihood of this actually occurring. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? So as we sit there, so you would have to basically, you would have to be able to win the Powerball like 6 times in a row, and then on your way to go pick up your check on the 6 times in a row, you actually be getting struck by lightning each time. Okay, so this is the mathematics. I mean, it's just math. It's just math. So in Broward County, they didn't get the "don't cheat by blank ballot" memo. So Joe Scott over there, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. And so, what's the blank ballot, right? So in Broward County, we did a similar calculation, and I posted on X about it. And Liz Harrington, President Trump's attorney, retweeted it. And out of, it's actually 233 precincts in Broward County had an identical percentage of blank ballots being cast in them over 4 election cycles. So the odds of that happening are, it's called 1 in 1 no million. And that's like a legitimate number. I found that out, you know. So it's 10 to the 32nd power. And so as I kind of went through all of this, we ran all the math, we ran the probabilities of it, and you know, it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible that this stuff happened. I mean, so this one in Broward here, it's 2 times 10 to the 34th power. Yeah. Your odds of winning once on a Powerball, 1 in 292 million, you'd have to win the Powerball 4 times in a row. Okay? 4 times in a row. But it gets better. It gets way better. So what we found is this stuff called the VVSG, right? It's the Voluntary Voting System Guidelines. It's the standards, accuracy, okay? So in order for them to certify the machines for use in the state of Florida, you have to meet certain requirements. First requirement is they have to meet the federal standard as the minimum, okay? The minimum standard. And the federal accuracy requirements for the voting systems is 1 error and 250,000 occurrences, okay? 1 error and 250,000 occurrences. Well, in Broward County, in 2018, it exceeded that by 63,500 times. Okay? Now, Florida, we are the gold standard, just to let you know. We are the gold standard because Florida, we decided after the hanging Chad debacle that we wanted to have better systems in place than at the federal level. So our guidelines for accuracy are 1 error in 1 million. But that presented a big problem in 2018. That was the year that we had Andrew Gillum and Ron DeSantis run. And in that case, in that instance, the machines, they missed the bogey on accuracy because it was 254,000 times off. But it got a little bit better in 2020. Got a little bit better. It was only 59,000 times it exceeded the maximum allowable error rate. And then 2022, Broward County, again, we caught a lot of this, we brought some attention to it, and mysteriously, this ever-increasing number of blank ballots, it went from this ever-increasing number to statistical zero in key counties, one of which was Hillsborough County, because there was 21,000 blank ballots cast in Hillsborough County during the 2020 election. And I'd like to harass Craig Latimer at all possible chances. And so I've been tormenting Craig with the blank ballot issue, okay, since we found it here. And then in 2022, it went to zero. And then mysteriously, in 2024, for the primary, they had a small, very small amount of blank ballots. But in the general, Craig hid all the blank ballot data, just left it off the report. We're not even gonna go there. And so, makes you wonder, what's Craig hiding? What is Craig hiding? Well, I know what Craig's hiding. Craig's hiding treason. Craig's hiding compromised voting systems. So, one error in 1 million occurrences. Well,
I'll probably get myself in trouble and you in trouble. Who knows? One of the ways I ran elections, one of the places I think that is really problematic that nobody has looked at is the certification of the systems, right? Certification of election systems. For the record, not saying there's any fraud, but how do you certify?
There's fraud.
Well, I know, but the election, what's at stake? Exactly. Well, no, but even better. Look at how much money it is.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. Well, okay, but even just the Election Assistance Commission is the entity that certifies machines. Okay, it has no real teeth, but it controls who's certified or not, which means it controls who has the good housekeeping stamp of approval worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. What are the chances that has been done? Everything else we've seen in government is broken, corrupt, messy, incompetent, or something, right? What are the chances that's the one place where it's totally competent and totally without any flaws? I'm just saying, let's go look, right? And that's what we've got to do to get to the bottom of this.
In the same way that the gun control people are fine with gang bangers having guns,
Right?
the democracy is sacred people are very upset when you want to make sure that elections have integrity. That's weird.
yeah, kind of funny how that works, isn't it? So he's right, there is a lot of money involved, a lot of money. And one of the things that we were really interested in was how can they do this? And so we did a lot of homework on this. We researched the patents on the machines. We got the patents on the machines. And we saw we got the actual certifications for the machines. And we saw that they had modems. And they were all saying, oh, no, there's no modems. They're not connected to the internet. But they were connected to the internet. And we got the proof of them being connected to the internet. And this part here that we see, this is the scope. This is part of the scope document for the certification. Now, Craig, to this day, will lie to you. And he will say a blank ballot is a blank page of a multi-page ballot. That's just not true. That's a lie. Just like when they say, oh, well, they have modems, but they don't connect to the internet. Well, so what Craig was saying, right? Craig was describing an undervote, okay? And an undervote would have been all of the votes on that blank page. So let's say there was a page, right? Let's say it was a 2-page ballot. Okay, on page 2, there was 4 races on that ballot, and there was no votes on it. Well, you would have 4 undervotes, okay, on that page. Well, but here, blank ballots. Totally blank ballots. Any blank ballot alert is tested, yes. Totally blank ballots. If blank ballots are not immediately processed, there must be a provision to recognize and accept them, yes. Totally blank ballots. If operators can access a blank ballot, there must be a provision for resolution. Totally blank ballot. So we know that people don't go out on election day, all right? We know that people don't go out during early voting. We know people don't go out on vote by mail or provisionally and cast a 100% blank ballot. We know that that doesn't happen because mathematically, the odds of that occurring is 1 in 10 to the 10,000th power. So in order for that to occur, you would have to be able to take a coin and flip it 33,220 times, and every time it land on heads in order to achieve that same mathematical probability. So, did we have a good result in this last election? Certainly in some too big to rig races, but not for the supervisor of elections, not in Congress for Rocky, your property appraiser, clerk of court, I think, you know.
John Balance.
So this is the reality of it, okay? And we know that Craig is a liar. We know that Craig is a felon, okay? Because we caught him doing it. We caught them altering the records. Now, I've been working really hard, putting together and laying out all of this information. Some of my work, my other work you probably heard about, it's all of the stuff with the Act Blue and the stolen identities of the elderly people that James O'Keefe went and was exposing in Maryland. So that's all my work. And so how do we get here? Well, these guys right there, right? And their dirty little Smurf friend. And there's a lot of them that are in on it.
Who's the middle guy? Who was the middle guy?
His son.
That's George's son. That's George's son.
Who is now with Uma Abedi.
I'm gonna explain something to you. I look at massive data sets. I look at data sets that will boggle your mind. And I can't do it by myself. So we had to invent AI to help me do what I do. And so what we do as we look at this stuff, I'm pretty good at pattern recognition. That's like one of the things I'm really good at. And I can sit there and look at a large data set that's a text file and just start scrolling it. And I will find, I'll see a pattern and I'll be like, oh, bingo. And so we've been working on building this AI, myself and a business partner. And we've been doing some really cool stuff with it, in particular with the Smurfs. And by the way, Act Blue isn't the only people using Smurfs, okay? The Purple Party, they use Smurfs too. So your Lindsey Grahams, your cocaine Mitch McConnells, your Kevin McCarthy, your pick a name that's trying to impede the America First agenda, and they're getting money this way too, a lot of it. So you've got WinRed, you've got Act Blue, you've got some other ones that they have subsequently moved on to since we outed them, and one of them is the Action Network. Another one that was stood up by the labor unions, and then you have another one called Democracy Engine. And so what we know is in order for this level of fraud and this level of malfeasance to go on, and that was why I ran those mathematical probabilities, okay? And so the likelihood, all right, I mean, we're beyond scientific. Like there's, we've ran all the different fraud detection algorithms. We've gone through all the mathematical probabilities of this stuff, and it's irrefutable. It's absolutely irrefutable, okay? As a matter of fact, here in Hillsborough County, I do have to thank Craig and his public records request team, because I had sent in a request for a letter that the EAC and ES&S had sent to Hillsborough County SoE about modems being attached to the tabulators. And the fact that if there was a modem attached to the tabulator, the EAC certification was void in its entirety, okay? And so whoever was doing PRRs that day, they didn't check with the big chiefs, because they ended up sending me an email, or a series of emails. And in this series of emails, ES&S said, hey, there was some stuff in our marketing materials that said that these tabulators with the modems were EAC approved and certified. Well, they're really not. And so, you guys are gonna have to take the stickers off the machines to say that they're not certified. This is in April of 2020, okay? So Craig Latimer's solution to the we're using uncertifiable machines isn't to take the modems out of the machine, okay? It's to peel the sticker off. That's his thing, right? So with the $1,800 public records request that we had Craig give us, where he altered the data and altered the records and gave them to us, that's called uttering. That's another crime, by the way. And what we he thought they were slick, and they figured what they were going to do is just take out the IP addresses that the machine had connected to, because they didn't want us to know that they were actually connected to the internet, right? So anybody here remember the primary of 2024? You guys remember that, when on election night, the entire system statewide went down and crashed?
7 p.m. About 7 p.m., wasn't it?
Yeah. Wonder why they would do this. Probably because they wanted to change the data that was getting transmitted. And we know how they did it. We know that they did it. There was a lot of talk about how they did it in 2020, and they were doing it from overseas. And so we know that they did it. And when we looked at the records that Craig Latimer gave us, we would see neat things like 2 ballots cast with 2,384 votes counted as they were importing the data into the election system. And Billy Christensen over the weekend, I pointed out to Billy, I'm like, Billy, I go, where's all the blank ballot data for the general? And what's up with these numbers? And so Billy went and he was looking at the report. He's like, on these paper reports, the font size is different. The font's different for this. I wonder what would cause that to happen. Somebody modifying the reports. And so what we know is that it's a crime. It's called official misconduct. And it's a pretty neat thing, because we're hammering them on this all across the state of Florida. So Florida statute 838.022. So if somebody at an elections office or a public office, if they deny, delay, prevent, or alter an election record, okay, that's a crime, it's a felony. If they do it, and they do it maliciously, and somebody obtains a benefit from it, say the supervisor of elections, and they harm somebody else, like their opponent, or the voters, because for every one of these blank ballots that we caught being cast, that's actually one voter whose right to vote has been taken away from them. That is an actual factual voter. And there has been an actual factual conspiracy to deprive them of their right to vote. And there is an actual factual conspiracy to hide it. So we're fighting this in Palm Beach County. We're fighting it in Pinellas County. I'm right now I'm browbeating Billy Christensen to open up a new front here in Hillsborough County against Craig Latimer. And, you know, I have 2 cases right now in the 2nd District Court of Appeals in Tampa. And we know the crooked judges are in on it. They're in on it because they sealed all of the exhibits in my case, all of this evidence that we have, they sealed it all.
How can we help you? Can we make a donation? Can the donation be specific for Hillsborough County? And then also your website, how can we find you on Substack and keep following you?
Okay, so my cases are going to end up going to the Florida Supreme Court, the federal court, and to the United States Supreme Court. That's gonna happen. But I can't do it by myself. We need more resources and we need more help. And so if you go to immutablетruthelections.substack.com, right up here, if you go there, immutabletruthelections.substack.com, and become a subscriber on my Substack. I don't charge for it at all, so you can go there and read all of the articles that I post, everything that I do, because this is too important for me to pay gate, okay, behind a paywall. I won't do that. And so, but we need, you know, we're gonna, to get this case formatted and printed and put into the proper style for a U.S. Supreme Court challenge, you know, we're gonna need some help.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I don't understand anything about this blank ballot stuff. I mean,
They don't either. They don't either. So basically, you go out on election day, you fill out everything on your ballot, you go to the machine, you put it in, and you think you cast your ballot. But the machine reads it as being 100% blank because they don't like the way you voted. And so we know how they do it. We know what.
Well, how do they, that's what I'm asking. How do, we know that people just don't send in blank ballots. So if it's actual people voting, how is the vote being?
So, you know how there's like little bubbles?
Yeah.
On the thing? It's like a map, okay? It's a grid, and there's a position, so you've got X and Y coordinates, okay? And what they will do is they shift X and Y coordinates over just a little bit so that, because they saw that you, as a Republican, you checked in on the poll book. They move the orientation on it, and your ballot that you just cast now reads as being blank.
But that's a better understanding or explanation, but.
And if they can do that,
Is that being done manually by somebody, or is
it's an
that?
algorithm.
Huh?
It's a computer program. It's an algorithm.
Okay.
So,
But isn't it doing it for Republicans and Democrats?
No, it's only doing it to the detriment of Republicans to help Democrats.
You're profiled.
They want Democrats to vote,
They
not
just-
Republicans.
They don't want your vote. Because here's the thing,
So how do you find out if your vote ever counted?
Well,
Was ever counted?
you won't ever, because your vote's supposed to be secret. And so this is the machine. They take advantage of that. The secrecy of the ballot is what they depend on. As a matter of fact, in Florida, they passed a law that if you vote in a precinct that has less than 30 votes for any particular thing in a particular contest, they don't even have to show any of the data for that small precinct. Yeah. A government ceases to be legitimate if there is no consent of the governed, okay? And so I'm gonna say a very unpopular truth, okay? Very, very unpopular truth. the establishment Republicans rigged the primaries for the establishment selected Republican candidate, okay? Democrats do the same thing. And then whoever cheats the best in the general, or if there was a deal made, like in Kathy Katz's district, okay? There's a deal made. So the Republicans get all the congressional seats around Kathy Castor's district. But Kathy's district is protected. And that is a deal that the GOP made with the Democrats. They don't care. I mean, it's just true. So, I mean, that's going to be a very unpopular thing.
20 years ago.
But that deal still holds today.
She's always gonna win that, going forward.
Unless,
Until the deal's.
until you deal with what we're outing, okay? And so with the data that I have personally, and just going back to what you had mentioned earlier, okay? Based on the law of large numbers and everything that I have personally observed and seen, Donald Trump destroyed it in 2020. Donald Trump eviscerated her, okay, in 2024. And it was probably a margin of anywhere from 80 to 90% of a win, even in Democrat-held areas. I'm telling you. I mean, you can see it, we can see it, and this is why a lot of them, they want to hide the machine data from us. So in Maryland, there's some analysts that I've worked with up there. They've identified in Maryland and Colorado where they're actually flipping the votes on the machines, on the counts. So it doesn't matter what the ballots say going in, as long as they keep a big enough spread in the difference between the win. Nobody gets a chance to even look at the ballots, and nobody knows.
So why even vote? I mean, why even run? Why would any Republican ever want to run?
Well,
Money.
If you know that it's
money?
rigged, I mean, why would you even want to put money, your own money, or have anybody else's
Well,
money if you knew that?
here's the thing. Yesterday we remembered a bunch of guys, right? Yesterday, well, I don't know about you, but I lost some friends, you know, overseas. I lost some friends. My grandfather was a veteran. He lost a lot of friends. He was in the 101st Airborne during World War II. And, you know, I got 3 young daughters. And so the reason why I ran was to expose this and to get to the bottom of it and fix it. Because at the end of the day, right, I want to leave my daughters with the nation that I thought that I grew up in. And so I don't know how long they've been doing this. I don't know, okay? I have no idea. But what I can tell you is based on the available data that I have personally collected and viewed, Florida has not had a legally certifiable or legally certified or administered election since 2009, when they last deployed, or when they deployed these versions of ES and S voting machines, because they've been connected to the internet the entire time. I mean, you ever wonder why these people who we don't really like keep getting elected year over year over year over year? I used to always ask that question. And everybody used to say, oh, it's just, you know, it's the, our guy is, you know, it's the, our guy isn't so bad, but everybody else sucks. But really, anybody, I'm going to tell you right now, and again, you're not going to like what I'm going to tell you, but anybody today who is holding office, okay, they really and legitimately were not. They were not. Their election was uncertifiable, and it was illegally administered. And that's just the way it is.
Is anybody in the Trump administration working on this with you?
Well, I was,
Mess out?
I talked to some people who were pretty close to President Trump. Roger Stone, Peter Tickton, his attorney, one of his attorneys. I happen to know that President Trump got a briefing memo from me on the Sunday before the primary, and I explained to him all of the vectors that they were going to utilize to steal the election and my race, and magically it all happened exactly the way I said it was going to happen. So I'm glad that his race was too big to rig, but the down ballot candidates, they weren't.
No.
So,
Is there anything we can do?
yes, get active, get more active. Subscribe to my Substack, talk to people, bring people here to this
Can you
meeting.
give us the address to that again, please?
It's called immutabletruthelections.substack.com. So, thank you all very much. I know I went way over on my time, but, so, thank you.